Well, folks, I just finished Gods Undead 3, which I was very much not looking forward to. But I have to say I was actually surprised by the film's message in some positive ways, even though it had some massive problems. So I'm going to tell you what I liked first and then get into what I didn't like. So the movie is about a church on a college campus that gets burned down. And the college uses this as an excuse to move the church off campus, move the building off campus. And the pastor fights back. So it turns into this whole big fight, and people in the town are taking sides. The film ends with the pastor agreeing to move the church because he realizes how much it's dividing the town, which I actually really appreciated. I thought that was I would never in a million years would have guessed that was a thing. So that was actually pretty good. There was actually a specific line towards the end where a person who is portrayed as a non-Christian in the movie says, this pastor this pastor cares more about the community than about being right. I really like him, and I think he's legit. That's really cool. And I think, again, that if we're really serious as Christians about showing people that we love them and care about them, that's the way it has to go, not standing our ground and being right. So again, very surprised that was the film's message. Would also say that actually the film vilified Christians who are not okay with asking questions. So the main girl, I guess she was as main as anyone except for the main pastor. She is doubting her faith and wondering whether God's real. And she specifically says that she could never tell her parents because they would be angry at her. And then the main pastor's brother, you find out that they had a massive falling out in their family, and that basically when he went to college, he lost his faith and left home, and that he never came back because he understood that his lack of faith or his questioning was not welcome in the house. And the pastor tries to say it was his fault and that he was just trying to impress girls or that he broke mom and dad's heart. But the brother pushes back and says, no, you guys didn't make space for me and for the way I was trying to figure out my faith, and you hurt me. And the film leaves it like that. Like it really, I felt like it really took the brother's side and was condemning the pastor and his family. So actually, again, I really like that the film is actually trying to make it clear that not making space for questioning and faith is bad. I wish it would have gone further to say that not only is questioning not bad, it's actually an essential and important part of growing in your faith. It didn't quite go there, but again, a lot more than I expected. So those are a couple things I've liked. What are some of the things? Oh, I guess one other thing. I kept being irritated all through the movie that the pastor kept talking about the building as his church instead of the people. In fact, he basically spends nearly no time with anyone in his congregation. The only person in his congregation he does spend time with is the kid from the first movie, who's apparently on his church board. And the only reason he spends time with him is because this kid is helping him strategize how they keep their building. So there's literally no... there are no characters from his congregation who are named that are not useful for his agenda to keep the building. And I kept being very irritated about that. But at the end of the movie, he does come around and say that God basically said the building is not my church, the people are my church. Again, I wish that we had a little bit more of that conflict evident throughout the movie, that we saw that, just because the building was uninhabitable because it had caught on fire, his congregation was still doing something. But literally, it just seemed like because he didn't have a pulpit to preach in on a Sunday, he didn't pastor anymore. And he literally almost says that at one point. He's attending another church. Again, it's not clear that his congregation is attending with him or anything. So that was, again, like a half-hearted effort to get there, but I felt like the movie could have done a lot more with that, and it would have been a much more interesting conflict than the actual conflict, which was that the church has a right to be on the property. It's very confusing what kind of church it was. It was called St. James, which means it was probably an Episcopalian or Catholic church because it's, named Saint something. We actually find out that this church started the university like over 100 years ago, and that the university eventually was bought by the state and became a non-confessional place about 50 years ago. And honestly, that's when the church should have moved off campus, right? It should have said, okay, now we are operating as at a state college. It's time for us to move. Of course, no big surprise that 50 years ago, that wouldn't have been an issue for the university. But what was actually happening, we find out in the film, is that the university, and by extension, the state, was paying more money to Christian organizations because they were continuing to maintain the school that's on their land than other non-Christian organizations. So this is literally non-constitutional, right? It's going against the Constitution. This is a measurable thing. You can measure it in the money. And the film kept wanting to say, oh, this is just a history thing. We're not talking about history. We're talking about present. We're being persecuted. They kept trying to glom onto persecution language, social justice language, things like that, to say, see, we are being persecuted because the college wants us to move off the land. When in fact, what the peace and the unity that the film kept wanting to return to was a state of injustice, right? Where federal funds were not being allocated equitably, and where it was clear that there was an establishment of the state religion by accident or by oversight. And so what the protesters and the university were trying to do was actually return things to an actually just place. The movie was not interested in this perspective and kept painting the church and this pastor as the one who is in the wrong. Which again, just it feeds into that persecution complex. It helps too that even though this was probably an Episcopalian church, it seems like it was run like a non-denominational church. There were never any denominational authorities even mentioned, let alone consulted. And he talks about how he inherited the church from his dad, who was a pastor there before. So I don't know if there's more information about this in the previous movie that I didn't watch, but it was a weird kind of like want to have our cake and eat it too, where we're going to talk about a mainline church, but basically have it feel evangelical. And then lastly, I was in a congregation, or I was a campus minister at a campus when I was at Mizzou. The BSU is on campus, and it's a privately owned building in the middle of campus. So I lived the reality that this was trying to elaborate, and it just nothing rang true here. My friend Thomas was the priest at the Catholic church at the Newman Center that was not technically on campus, but it was like right next to campus, and most people actually thought it was on campus because campus kind of like wrapped around it, but it was not. Anyway, none of this is even remotely believable. And then the last thing, like, it's pretty problematic that they killed the black pastor at the beginning and used his death as a vehicle for all of these other people to come to Jesus. And it was said multiple times that all of these things are happening because God's trying to do something here. And so yet again, we have a person of color who's being sacrificed on the altar of white achievement and white progress. And you do have one moment where the white pastor goes in and cries to a black pastor about how hard things are. And the black pastor says, I think the line he actually said was, I could build you a church with all of the bricks that have been thrown through my windows. So we get like a little nod to black pain and how all of this works. But again, wow, like it would have been such an opportunity for this guy to reach the conclusions that he reaches, not through a private moment of prayer with God, but actually by sitting under the black church and learning from black theology and black pain about what this actually looks like, and maybe all of the ways that he is mistaking equity for injustice because of his privilege. So all of this to say, this movie was not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Maybe this franchise is moving in a good direction. Maybe just evangelicalism in general is having these conversations about doubt and questioning and privilege enough that despite their best efforts at seeping in, one person does call Jesus the ultimate social justice warrior, and he meant that in a positive way. So yeah, who knows where this franchise is going to go? I would love to hear if you saw it, or if not, are you surprised? I will say I did not enjoy this movie, though. Aesthetically, it was probably the best Christian movie I've seen. It looked the best. The filmmaking was the best. The acting was really strong, pretty much all the way around. Even the writing was relatively good. Again, compared certainly to other Christian movies I've seen. So I don't know. This movie wasn't good. I don't want to watch the last one, but thanks to everyone who donated. Birdemic is next, and then another Donor's Choice movie. And this went on almost 10 minutes. So you're welcome. Happy Bad Movie Birthday. I'm out.